welcome to episode 95 of the Random Thoughts Show.
The first thing we have to address today, for those in video, they have a very clear idea of what we're going to talk about. If you're listening on audio, Durham's got his left arm elevated up on the table with a dirty great cast.
That's getting immaculately clean, cuz. You know how hard I've been working? I've been glad wrapping this thing.
Oh, it's clean.
I object to your use of the word dirty.
It's clean, but it's dirty and great because it's big and it's right in the middle of the frame.
Gigantic. I could sort of put it down here.
It'll fill with blood. That'll be uncomfortable in 20 minutes. Yeah. Tell us how it happened, Durham.
Okay, so the first thing to be clear on is that this was an idiot-based injury. I think that's very important. I was downhill mountain biking,
which you've been getting into a little more these days.
Yeah, and I've just gotten good enough to think that I'm better than I am.
You're in that sweet that Venn diagram of danger.
Like a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. I think a little bit of skill is dangerous.
Yeah, you're better off to be useless and scared of yourself.
Yeah. And I've got a really good bike now, and I think that probably empowers a false sense of confidence as well. So I was going down a black run.
Down Red Hill area?
Yeah, Arthur's Seat, Red Hill. Yeah. I was not appropriately experienced or skilled for that level of ride and the speed I was at. And I kind of went over a drop off and buried the front wheel.
Into a tree root, you were telling me?
Into a tree root, and the whole bike stopped, and then I kind of tore up my wrist reasonably well, as well as scratching up the right side of my body. So 6 weeks.
In this guy?
Yeah. Which is not great. But anyway.
You're leaving out the fascinating part of the story to me, which was when you landed, it wasn't fell off the bike and landed on the ground.
That's my hypothesis, yeah. Because like in the movies, everything slows down. And sometimes in accident scenarios, things slow down. But it turns out downhill mountain biking, they did not. Like it's just, like you're riding along, everything's fine. And then all of a sudden you're just lying on the ground, wondering if you're dying. But I kind of reconstructed that I had... because there's a little rubber ring that goes around your suspension fork, and it's there as an indicator of whether you've completely compressed it, like whether you've bottomed it out. And I went back and I looked at
which is not good for suspension.
You don't want to bottom it out.
Okay.
It just shows you how much of the travel you're using. And mine was right at the top, so it completely bottomed out.
Right.
So my hypothesis is I hit the tree root and it kind of jammed. The fork completely bottomed out, absorbing as much of the kinetic energy as it could.
And then ran out of room, couldn't absorb any more.
And then my wrist became part of the suspension system.
And so what's the actual injury?
It's a little bit up to... it's a bit inconclusive, but it's a few avulsion fractures and...
Of the carpals, which are the little bones in the wrist.
Yeah. But it should be okay. Don't need surgery, so that's great news. No one likes getting the knife unnecessarily. Yeah. Gutting news for me with my training though, because it's been a really good long 18-month block of good training, and all of a sudden I can't lift any real significant weights at all. I've just got workarounds ahead of me, but we thought that might be an interesting topic to talk about, workaround injuries.
Yeah, how you can actually continue training and focus on other stuff while you might be otherwise slightly differently abled for a time being.
I'm temporarily differently abled. And look, my initial jerk reaction to it was, stuff it, I'm not going to do any lifting. I'll just run and ride, because I can't be bothered doing lifting that isn't going to have a big payoff.
Yeah, kind of like it's a bit binary.
It's binary. It's like, if I can't lift legit, I'm not going to lift at all.
So either hit the big lifts, put the weights up and go for it, or don't bother at all.
Yeah. And you gave me a bit of good wisdom.
You're a little bit down in the dumps and you're a little bit surly for a couple of days there.
A couple of things.
I would be the same. That wasn't a dig. That was just a statement of fact.
I wasn't, and that was me holding it in. Because the thing is that the cast, what it feels like the first 2 days, it felt like I was in a permanently on the losing end of a violent handshake.
Yeah, like just being squeezed.
Yeah, so it's just in pain. Yeah. Whereas now today, it's got a little bit more.
Hey, look at those. Yeah, they're normal shape now.
They're getting close to normal shape fingers. Yeah.
They're pretty fat there for a few days.
And just pretty despondent about not being able to train at all. But even just getting back onto the bike, it's been like on stationary bike. That's been really good. So, and your point was, well, you could still do a bit of opposite stuff.
My first thought was,
let's talk about
contralateral transfer, which is a sports science concept whereby you're in and they do the studies with immobilization. Challenging to get subjects for that, but they do. You do training, say, one arm bench press, bicep curls and stuff on your right arm. You get the cast off, and your left arm has actually maintained its strength, or in fact increased its strength sometimes.
Or it's maintained more of its strength.
So it depends. They've done different ways and done it different ways. But the moral of the story is that your brain kind of there's a crossover and an overflow effect inside the brain when you train your right side.
It's called contralateral neural overflow, which is the fancy
between the motor cortex,
which is pretty cool. And so, will you talk more about this? So, explain the idea of how that works.
And so it's mostly a neural phenomenon, or 100% a neural phenomenon. So that means you want your training to be heavy and intense, not high volume. So if you do, say, sort of 4 sets of 10 hypertrophy type training, or just general sort of, I suppose you call it broad sort of general basic training levels, it kind of doesn't have the same effect because you end up with a massive arm on one side and this skinny little wrist on the other. So you end up to train the muscles. So you actually need to sort of go more in the 6 to 3 rep range and take it really intense
to get the full benefit. And it's probably like all things nuanced, where you're still going to get some benefits if you're doing 8s. It's not like there's some magic cutoff where it just nothing.
But I suggested for you, Durham, that you do lower reps because you were worried that you're going to develop some glaring asymmetries through your rhomboids and pecs.
So I think that's, and I'm definitely going to start doing that. I was waiting until all the swelling went down a little bit more and just felt like lifting a bit more. And also I'm still pretty bruised. So both my knees are still pretty sore, and my shoulder and my ribs. I'm just giving them a bit of time. But I think I'm going to start on Saturday.
So what are you thinking for plan? So you've now on a 2-week gap as well for lifting. Which sucks.
It's an eternity. What I'm going to do is it's a twofold approach. One is exploit the contralateral neural overflow thing by doing just some one arm bench, one arm rows, one arm shoulder press. Just do all the movements that I would like to do with both arms with one arm at a reasonably high level, so that it's hard. And I'll just start out with hard to complete 12 reps on the very first one, because it's just
to get your body used to it again, because it's been 2 weeks,
and just also to kind of get used to doing. There will be different stresses. Like doing a one arm bench press is actually not just twice as difficult as doing a double arm bench press.
It's actually completely its own. It is its own exercise in a lot of ways.
Because there's more of a stability component than sort of an anti-rotation component. So I'll do that. And then the other day I had the thought that what I will also do is I'm going to rig up straps to my arm to above my elbow,
so mid bicep area,
and using the cables that we've got here, I'm going to do some essentially pec flies, reverse flies, and some sort of a side raise.
Okay, for the delt,
just to keep the delts ticking over. Now I've forgotten his name, but there was a guy who owned a gym over in the inner west, and he had
inner west of Melbourne.
And he had I think it was a congenital birth defect where he was missing the lower portion of one arm. But he became quite a successful bodybuilder in doing that, and he would just rig up these straps so he could still train
straight pecs and upper body.
He can do that. I can do that. Yeah. So,
and we often give athletes with wrist problems an elbow row. Which is where you hit the straps around both elbows and kind of get that double arm retraction.
So you can still get a bit of something. So I think I'll lead off with the heavier stuff. And then I'll treat all those things as kind of accessory movements just to keep things ticking over. And so for lower body, I think I'll do bodyweight squats. I will do walking lunges. I can do...
you can still hit all your calf and your isometric type work as well.
And I can do single leg RDLs. I can do some Swiss ball hammy curls. It's interesting when you... Initially, it's like, I can't do anything. This is the worst thing.
I'm just going to go home and eat cake and give it up.
I have eaten... do you know, I had the new McDonald's breakfast burger for dinner last night.
God, Durham.
You're allowed to eat
We'll have a talk after the episode.
It's pretty delicious.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
Just every now and then.
This is a health and fitness podcast. Let's keep it on track here.
So you actually, you have a bit of an emotional moment of, this sucks, blah, blah, blah. And then you look through all the things that you normally do and the things you'd like to do. You can do a hell of a lot.
There are a lot of clever ways, and we've seen a lot of different injuries in the gym where someone comes with just a 1 week thing, or a cork to this, or a bruise that, or a rolled this. And you go through the programs like, well, we can't do this, this, and this, but we can replace it with that. You can train your hips in a different way with this. We can do extra core work. We can hit the bike to keep you fit.
So
many options.
And I think, and there's so that's, I guess we've kind of gone about this back to front, that we've talked about the tactics before the strategy in a way. But I think when you have an injury, the ideal strategy is to go, right, this has happened. It's unfortunate. Process it. And then how can I make sure I come out of this in the best possible shape in the shortest possible time?
Because when you get back out of that injury, the rest of you still has to be able to function at your sport.
Yeah.
So if you're a footballer with a wrist injury in this situation, for example, there's no point ignoring your hamstrings and your quads and your running volume for that time. Keep as much of that up as possible, so that when the wrist is good, all you have to do is strengthen that, and
everything else is good to go.
You haven't got 6 weeks of atrophy across the entire body to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's that strategically, and also what I think is, I've got no doubt you heal better when you're feeling good.
For sure.
There's a psychological component. There's an interplay between our psyche, our emotional state, our cortisol levels, all those things, and our healing rate. And in addition to that, it's just a basic blood flow thing. If you're training more often, you're getting more fresh blood,
flowing through the body, more oxygen, more nutrients. Yeah.
You're just going to heal up faster as well. So there's a lot to be said for making sure you have a strategy of training around. Training through an injury is stupid, where you've got an injury and you just get pushing through and making it worse and worse. So if I were to try and bench press with my wrist, that'd be quite stupid right now.
Very silly.
But training around it is really, really valuable. Yeah. In terms of what we see most often, the most common thing is you'll see someone who will have
ankle sprains, the most common.
Rolled ankle.
Rolled ankle, so they just think everything's done for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I can't. I'll see you in 3 weeks. It's like, no. As soon as
see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Like as soon as it's not painful. My view is, if you live, and a lot of athletes live a long way away from us, so if it's going to be like an hour drive or 2 hour round trip to come see us, and you've rolled your ankle and it's throbbing every time it's below.
So if sitting in the car is going to cost you more than the workout gains, then it's probably not worth it. Yeah.
But I would say in general, once you're past that 72 to 96 hour mark,
once you can sort of slightly weight bear, even with crutches,
or if you live close to us, or if you live close to your gym, or if you're not training with us, if you're in another part of the country or the world, as soon as you know it's not going to set you back by dumping extra blood into the area, you should just be getting into training ASAP.
Yeah, I like that. As long as the logistics aren't going to be an issue and such, then get into it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Because there's also the positive effect of being back in your gym, maintaining your routine. It's just like business as usual. It's no longer a mountain. It's just a little speed hump. It's just a little thing I got to deal with, as opposed to, where have you been? Oh, well, I rolled my ankle and just haven't been in. It's like, tell us. We can adjust your program. We can do so much stuff around that and keep you going.
And I think the thing that people don't like to confide or give away is often just how low an emotional point you can hit, and how rapidly when you get injured. And like you feel,
it sucks.
You feel pretty great. And for me, I was like I felt really crap because I was injured, and then I was like really disappointed in myself as a 44-year-old man with alleged mental strength for how
and the frontal lobe, apparently.
But the frontal lobe's under question. It's under review. It really rocked me a little bit how sooky I got. And the great thing was I said, well, I'll just get going, go to work, and just coming into work and being around our team, that alone made me feel like way better. And then the second thing was being around our athletes, like being within our sort of culture and environment. You just feel really good because you're in amongst like-minded people, and I think
and working hard. Yeah,
I think that really, really helps. Yeah. I think it's actually, and that factor is more magnified with junior athletes because their self-identity is often so wrapped and entwined with their sporting performance.
Yep.
So it's even more important that those guys
maintain something. Keep going to training, sit on the side, do form shooting if you're a basketballer, do some handball work if you're a footballer.
Yep.
Something to keep yourself involved in the team, go to the game, sit on the bench, whatever it might be.
Yep.
And if you train in the gym like ours, if you're lucky enough to be in this sort of culture and environment, then keep going. Keep going. Do your upper body, do your core work, train the other leg for that unilateral crossover effect.
And treat it as an opportunity. So I'm trying to learn to write right-handed.
I had to do that when I smashed up my thumb.
Yeah,
I just got good as the thumb got good. Yeah. I was like, nah, I'm back to the right. Yep.
So I'm going to try. I'm going to give it a good go. The other thing is I found a dictation app for the computer so I can dictate emails, which I don't think I'm going to give up when I'm finished because I'm not a fast typer.
No.
The email dictation is pretty sweet. Yeah, it's pretty good. So that to me, that's a little silver lining in it as well. I've actually found I've temporarily been a lot less efficient, but I've found a way to make it a little more efficient at work as well.
Nice.
What else is there in terms of training around the injury? So
I think we've wrapped it up kind of nicely. I can't think of any other things. You want to keep working. So I suppose a little bit
wrap it up.
Mid summary. If we think of anything else, you want to. I think the most important part of continuing training is the psychological benefit.
Yeah,
of staying involved, treating it more like a speed hump as opposed to this mountain you have to climb.
Yeah,
it's just a little glitch.
It's a thing that's happened. Yeah,
I can keep going, business as usual, and you keep up your routine. I think with the people going, I can't do the big thing, so therefore I won't do anything. It's kind of we get very attached to the exercises we're good at. And so if you're normally squatting 120 kilos and all of a sudden you're doing a single leg squat with body weight and sucking at it, or a walking lunge, for example, the vest, and it lacks that badass effect.
Yeah, it feels lame.
But that doesn't mean it's not still effective.
Yeah.
You can still do power training. You can still do a heap of different stuff for different parts of your body in different ways. And just because it's not the thing that you've mastered and that you've sort of treated as your badass exercise doesn't mean it's not going to then transfer back to that exercise when you're able again.
I think that points me to the biggest takeaway, which is if you can maintain the best possible level of stress on your muscles, joints, bones, and ligaments whilst you're injured, although it's not nearly as good as what you're normally doing, it's infinitely better than doing nothing. Because the worst thing is you come back from 6 weeks of nothing and you squat a broomstick and you're sore for 3 days. Your tissues in 6 weeks go, you appear not to require sporting prowess anymore.
You don't want tendons, you don't want muscle cells, you don't want type 2 fibers.
Yeah, everything goes
mush.
Pretty mushy, pretty rapidly.
See anyone who's had an ACL surgery in those first 3 weeks, and their quad is just, because they can't move, it's immobilized, and 3 weeks is just jelly.
Yeah.
And it's just this floppy thing. And effectively, that's what you're doing when you stop all your training for, say, a wrist in this situation. Your legs can still work. They've still
plenty.
Yeah.
And for all of you upper body injury people, particularly wrist and forearm injury people out there, the cool thing is we can still run.
Yeah.
Like run, ride, do a bunch of lifting. It's not that bad. Just not so much with the riding with your dominant hand. Although my right hand's already nearly as pretty in terms of my handwriting as my left.
Yeah, this injury is going to end up being an absolute blessing for you and for Core Advantage. The dictation app for the email. You're going to hide in that little office where it's sort of soundproof in there. You're just going to dictate away and get inbox 0 pretty much every day. Your handwriting on both hands is going to be just as good. So you can just
I'm going to do two forms at once.
Flink the pencil from side to side when your hand's a little sore. And then you're going to come back better and stronger than ever. So it's going to be great.
It's great. Although I'll be a little skinny fat. I'm resigned to that a tiny little bit.
Yeah, if you keep eating McDonald's burgers for dinner and cake and...
It was a breakfast burger though, so, healthy points?
Not sure. Don't think so. Don't think we can give any healthy points for that.
Cool. All right. Thanks for tuning in.
I don't think we have any show notes for today, do we? I can't think of any in our resources category that goes with it. No, maybe the acute to chronic workload ratio.
Yeah,
as always, is the classic here.
That's a great one, and a great book, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Okay.
So if you're feeling like you're having a bad time, read about a man who endured the concentration camps of the Holocaust and formed a type of psychotherapy called logotherapy, which is the concept is you can kind of endure anything if you have a strong enough why. It's about how you interpret it and how you put through that filter. So just in terms of a perspective, a bit humbling in a sense. Yeah, good book. Yeah. Cool. See you next time. Yeah, and then before we go, we are now completely up to date with the archive. Right. So all the archive episodes for those listening on audio, they are completely up to date. So you will now find out episodes 1 through to 95 will all be on our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher,
Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yep.
Enjoy.
Cool.